Hello, Peaceful Warriors. This is your host, Anil, and welcome to my show, Peaceful Growth, where I interview successful entrepreneurs and experts who have achieved remarkable growth in their business or profession. We all want to grow in our life, right? But not at the cost of our peace and happiness. So we also talk about some of the strategies, tips, and techniques on how to manage this growth by also having a successful and purposeful life. You can also sign up for my weekly newsletter, Learn Plus Grow, at anilg.substack.com, where I share 3 tips to help you learn, grow, and inspire each week. Now to today's episode. Hey everyone, this is Anil. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Multidots, Multicollab, and Dot Store. And in today's episode of Peaceful Growth, I have Tammie Lister with me here. Tammie is actually a huge inspiration for me and my team. We have been watching her contribution in the WordPress and her, the design talent. So she has been a huge inspiration. And just very recently, I had a chance to connect with her, and she has been helping us for Multicollab design and some of the advising on that product, which is really, really helpful. And she has also been a lot of WordPress core contribution experience. I asked her that question before, and she has not been able to remember the number of years, which means that is a lot. That is a lot. And in the past, she has worked at Automatic, XWP, Extendify, and she's passionate about product design, engineering, psychology, and performance. And she has also been the speaker at different WordCamps and events. So let's get this started. Hey, Tammie, good to have you here.
Hey, good to have you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course, yeah. And in the last few months, I got to know you a little bit more, and everything I had, all the interactions that we had, there's so much new information, profound information that I learned. And also, I have also been reading your blog, some of the content that you have written around the Gutenberg design, WordPress design, or just in general, the design and engineering principles. So that was very inspiring and insightful. And I hope, people who are listening to this, they will be able to learn a lot of new things and insights from today's discussions. And also your WordPress core contribution and your experience, that's huge. So we will also talk a little bit about it in a way so that it can help and inspire, others to contribute more in WordPress or other open source platform and tools. So let me get started with this question, Tammie. So I went to your website and I saw this number on your website, 001230423. Can you explain what is it? What does it mean?
It's literally like the date version of the theme. That's all it is. I am with my recent role, I've recently kind of listed all my roles, and my recent role is at Inpsyde as a developer. I've returned to my developer roots, and when I created my theme, I really wanted to kind of give a reflection back to that by just putting it there. I've had this kind of obsession with barcodes for a very long time, so that's like my little nod at like a barcode and a timestamp. I don't know if you remember, we used to always put like date timestamps on like themes, and so that's what I'm doing there. That's literally what I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Great. So Tammie, let me start with before you started your career and joined the WordPress community or industry, can you tell us a little bit about your journey before you joined the WordPress?
Yeah, so I've always had a hybrid background, art, technology. I think back in the day, it was thought you could only ever do one. You left or right brain, and it turns out you can do both. And so I trained in art, I trained in psychology. My interests were always very hybrid. I kind of left with a background in art and then discovered it's really hard to make it as an artist. My art was specifically very technical, photography or painting. And then I kind of retrained basically in technology, in software engineering, but I retrained at a time where the web was a new thing. I'm really aging myself. And so I got to train in this new language called PHP and all these new technologies like rotating GIFs and all these kind of fun things. So I got to be kind of at the start of the web in that sense. And that really was when I could combine digital with like visual with kind of code. I could do those things. It wasn't that you had to do one or the other. You could do both, and actually doing both was a real advantage in that. So freelancing was possible. I had these skills at that crazy time of booming startups, the first kind of startup wave. So I got to kind of experience that. And then I kind of I was always into open source and kind of fell my way into open source WordPress and boom, 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 kind of typical journey. I think it's really typical for a lot of people in the industry, kind of circling around, doing various roles, and then kind of falling into finding their open source project and finding their path, I think. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad you mentioned about the two contrast types of interest and skill. I experienced that when I started my career as a web developer. And then I was enjoying the whole coding and building things and all that. And one fine day, one of my boss, before I started Multidars, this company where I was working for, so they offered me a position of leading 20 people. So it was like a whole big team, and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about leading this team of 20 people?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds interesting. But does that mean that I need to give up code? Like, will I be able to still do the code?" They're like, no, so like that will be a challenge, like this managing 20 people and code will be difficult. But at the time, I kind of like asked myself, I was like, yeah, I know how to code. And it's like, but managing the people, like, working with the people, and that's something that I felt like more like a bigger challenge in a way. And it's like, that might also be a good skill, like coding and people management combining will open up more doors for opportunities in the future for my career and growth. And also I think the point that convinced me was this. I was like, people are more complex than code, so I think it's much more fun. Right? Because code,
I think they're similar though, which is why I kind of think there's a big line between psychology and code, but that's maybe how my brain works, that I kind of see human programming very similar to programming, but that's maybe just me.
What you mentioned about the left-right brain, right? It's kind of same thing, because if you look at the code, it's very logical, rational. If you follow the rules, you will get an expected and desired output. But on the people, they're very dynamic.
Humans are following rules. They just have lots of different rule sets, just like different programming languages. You just have to maybe listen to what language they're functioning in. That's something that I kind of learned from the psychology background. It's more finding what data set they're running. Is kind of, if we're talking, that's basically what you've got to do, is just work out what operating system they're working in and what programs they're loading. And if we're talking in those terms, it's really weird to talk in those terms, but that's kind of what humans are like. And I don't mean to kind of belittle humans in that way, but I think sometimes we we like to overcomplicate ourselves, and we like to think we are no different than the things we create, but we are the people that create these things. So these things are very similar to us in the way that they function because they come from us. Languages are languages, be they programming languages or they linguistic languages. They're kind of the same. So, yeah.
No, that's very profound. Oh, wow. All right. So let's move on to the next question, Tammie. It's, I think, more about your inspiration to when you started not started, but kind of like was thinking about, so I wanted to kind of like go into your thought process in that moment when you were considering to join the open source contribution. So what was going in your mind at that time?
I didn't really have a thought. For me, open source has always been kind of natural. And I think that comes from just the art background. Is do you share your work and you share what you do? I guess that's always been the way that I've kind of functioned. So for me, I kind of fell into Linux was cheap to use. It was easy. Even from a gaming perspective, I remember playing like games and doing community. So it was always like a community thing for me. So for me, it really wasn't that. It aligned with my thoughts. It aligned with everything that I wanted to do. It just kind of worked. There's that tinkerer inside me of just kind of that balance between like the engineer artist kind of thing going on. And you can do that there. It makes it a bit harder if you're trying to do it for different platforms and different things. And over time, it has got harder to be able to do it for kind of platforms. It's actually becoming a lot easier. But yeah, so for me, it was never really... It's weird because a lot of people are like, this was the time I decided when I went into open source and direction. I know kind of I was trying to, like for WordPress specifically, I was trying to have my own system, like most people back in the day of blogging. And then it was like someone mentioned, hey, this is easier. And I was like, no, I want to do my own thing because it has to be hard, because everyone thought it had to be hard, and turns out it didn't have to be hard. And it was a lot easier for me then focus on the design, the tweaking and kind of doing stuff, and the actual, back in the day, there was like competitions to change your CSS, and there was, it was about creating the content and being part of those communities and writing. So I could do that more because then WordPress could take the load for me, and then I could focus on building the software and all those kind of things. But once I could understand templating engines and I could see how I could build upon it, those kind of things. But it's always been a kind of natural fit for me, I guess. So I've never been the time I changed from, and my entry point was Linux to WordPress, which is kind of a weird entry point for someone with an art background, I think. Yeah. But also because I had been studying kind of software engineering and had that background, like that's kind of the programs that you learn, is like learn your terminal and learn, and kind of that's like what you're learning at school, and then you so for me, I was not afraid of that background. And Linux today, so much nicer compared to Linux back then, was not as friendly at all.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you mentioned Linux, because that's how actually I also got into the open source. So I was in a college, studying computer science with my business partner, now Aslam Multani. So we both were actually, we went to the same college and we were a classmate. And one of our professor, he wanted to experiment with Linux. So he's like, hey, this is this cool open source operating system. It can save a lot of money in licensing cost for our college and a lot of colleges around the city. So it's like, it's not something that a lot of people right now know about it or leverage it. So it's like, I'm looking for some students who are interested in volunteering this experiment. So my business partner, Aslam, and I, we both signed up for that. And I think that changed our life, because that experience, those 2 years, the amount of exposure that we had, and what you mentioned about like that was a moment where we started to learn about working as a community, working as a team, because it was like more a volunteer, so we were not getting paid, of course.
Yeah.
But that was a kind of like the motivation at that time, that we were learning so much just by being in the group.
You're going to fail if you use Linux. Like I've just gone back to using Linux actually, and I am daily going to fail at something because I'm using it. It's great. It's so much easier now. I was just saying, it is lovely now. It is amazing. I am enjoying it so much. But particularly back then, particularly drivers and things, and it was hard. Like I was building.
I remember those hard disk partition. Like if you remember, like when you install, like you have to pick different partition. I was like, wow, this is so complex.
And every weekend you would have to because it wasn't laptops. You were building your own computer, so pretty much every weekend you had to take your computer apart. You had to have the cases off because it would overheat. I am sounding so old, but that's kind of what you had to do. You had to have the cases off because it would overheat. Every weekend you have to rebuild the thing, and then it would be like a new distribution. Like one month it would be this flavor was the top one that was actually secure, and then the next month it was the other one that was secure, and then for 6 months everyone would jump onto one to pick it, and it was really, there was something quite tribal about which Linux distribution did you have and all these kind of things. I don't actually see that as much now, which is kind of quite interesting and curious. But really, you learn to not be afraid of failure, and I think that is incredibly important from just a coding and a product perspective, particularly in open source, because you just learn to just make do and not be afraid of, oh, it doesn't work. Oops, well, you can just unpick it and start again. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I remember, I think at that time, the Ubuntu was one of the distribution, and then there was a Red Hat.
Back when I was doing it wasn't Ubuntu. I'm talking like, I think Debian, and then Suzy was back when I was doing it. Like it was like we were talking like Lynx browser when I'm talking. I'm old.
Wow. Yeah. No, thanks for bringing that Linux, because it has really been like so long time. I haven't even thought about like all those different Linux distributions which were available at that time.
And if you were really like feeling yourself, you would not even have a Windows partition on your computer. You'd just be pure Linux. And then you were really feeling how proud you were.
Yeah.
It's like a badge of honor that you didn't have a case on your computer because it overheated so much, and all these other things. But there was something about it. There was something very like homebrew kind of, that kind of like club kind of approach, which is kind of good, I think. And everything was online async chat rooms and all those kind of things, and it was kind of, that taught me a lot about that kind of communication, because it's not a local communication, it's a remote communication as well. So from the start you're remote as well.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Tammie. So the next question I have is about the WordPress contribution, and I think now when I look at that, the documentation, there's so much documentation available for if you want to start contributing into WordPress. But I believe long time ago, when you first started, I wanted to understand that how easy it was to get into, like if you can tell a little bit about.
And I think the thing for me was I was already pretty aware of difficulty. Like if you can imagine, I came from Linux, so I was pretty like, particularly I mean, I'm a woman and I came from the Linux community. And there's a lot back in there, or those kind of things, coming from that, and then being aware of that noise, and then coming into, it was a very noisy space to then try and find my place. And that doesn't mean like it was shouty. It's more trying to find where you fit in a space where there's either a lot of demand or there's either a lot of voices. And I think for me, when I first turned up, it was, oh, okay, how on earth do I do anything? How on earth do I make an impact? How on earth do I, there wasn't the documentation. There wasn't the ways in. There wasn't the clarity. There wasn't the mentorship. There wasn't people like me that I could identify with so easily. It took a little while to find people like me, or to find voices like me, or to find someone that I could be aside. I kind of went down through the filtration system to find the smallest teams. I landed in WordPress eventually. And that kind of shows, I think, back in that day, I think people would find the smallest areas of core or the smallest subgroups, be it the theme team. I also found that. And then they would work their way up to core. And that was kind of a way. Now you actually find people going straight into core. And that is such a change. I don't think people realize how much of a change that is. If someone's first contribution is core, that blows my mind every single time that I see that, because that is an incredible achievement for someone. But yeah, it took me a while for even things like WordCamps. You know, England isn't full of WordCamps, particularly wasn't full of WordCamps back then. You know, it's for me, it was very much, how do I find a place where I can be worth? How do I find a place? I've always thought if you use open source software, you should put something back in. That's just the way. Like, your payment is a contribution. That's always the way for me. But WordPress back then was very like, how on earth do I pay for this with my contribution? But I pretty much found it. I found it for some amazing people who took their time with me, which is always the way. Those people, I hope that I've paid them back by then passing it on to other people, which I think is the currency of our community. And
do you remember any person's name in the beginning, the first person that you interacted with who helped you?
Yeah, I do. Paul Gibbs and Jay and so many people put stuff into me.
Do you think they're still involved in the WordPress community now? Or oh wow, nice.
Yeah. Jason but lots of people have spent time with me. To list every single person that's put into me would be really bad of me, because I would probably end up missing someone off, and that would be horrendous of me, and I would never want to do that. But I pretty much stand here because of 50, 60 people that have put into me, plus. And I think that is the same for any person who is, if any core committer says that they stand on their own, I would want them to check themselves, because you don't, because someone has helped you. They've either taught you, you know, I have been, this last week, someone's helped me, right? That's just what's happened. But people took time to just show, you know, that first person that says hi. You know, I remember going to a WordCamp, Mike Little spending some time with me because I wasn't drinking, and just saying hi and spending that time and talking to me. That I remember, you know, these conversations with people that you can have in hallways, these times that you have with people, they might not be commit code conversations, but they're marks in your memory that add to your, okay, this is my community. This is where I'm going to be part of. This is where I now belong, right? And become your DNA of your contribution journey. Yeah, so many people. I feel really bad like naming someone, because it feels like I'm then not naming someone. And there's so many people have been, and I've been lucky enough to then be a full-time contributor, which I feel I had so many people support me in that. That was like a daily support in my journey. So yeah.
Great. So what advice would you give someone who hasn't done any WordPress contribution, just kind of like still thinking about joining the WordPress contribution? Like, what are those based on your past learnings, what are some of the tips and advice comes to your mind?
So first of all, I would question whatever they have contributed already, and they want to look and think, are they contributing? Because often we think we're not contributing when we actually are. then I would want to say, why do you want to contribute? It's really important. I've heard so many people say, I want to be a full-time contributor. My first question is why? Why do you want to be a full-time contributor? I actually would dissuade someone from being a full-time contributor and say, like, maybe part-time. See what you want to do. What's your objective in being a contributor? What's your goal in that? Because contribution has to be a two-way street. If you're just contributing because you think it's a career path, it's a career path, but it's a very, very particular career path. It's like being an artist. It's a very particular career path for very few people. But it's a very particular journey. And I think that you can absolutely go on it, but you really have to know what that journey is going to encompass and everything. So just think about, like, are you contributing already? Are you contributing through your mentorship with people? Are you contributing through something that isn't code already, and you just don't recognize it? Then what area do you want to contribute in? Because people just go, oh, I'm going to be in core. Well, core's got a lot of people. And I love core and I love the editor, but core and the editor, kind of the popular kids at school. And there's so many areas that need contributions. And think about something I learned at the start was the people talk about trash or rubbish on the floor, but the thing in open source communities is people are really grateful if you pick up things off the floor. And the areas of the projects where I haven't got the light or haven't got people working on that are really needing it, if you go into that area and you can make that your thing and you can own that, that could be amazing for you. That could also be amazing for you from a business perspective if that becomes I've seen people build like businesses on that, be that from the products that they create or be that from the services that they offer because they become a specialist in that particular area or something like that. I kind of did that a little bit when I was working on WordPress. For a while, I was working freelance on just specializing in community work because I got that very particular knowledge. I was kind of one of the few people that knew how to do WordPress theming at scale. So therefore, I was getting some really good work and I wrote a book. And, because I niche of a niche, right? Like sometimes, and that wasn't a conscious decision, but I now in reflex, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't, and so that would be one of my advices is just think about like, where are you really passionate about? Where are you drawn to? Because just thinking to go into the areas which are the hot topics, that's not going to be super, that's not something that's going to make you get up in the morning and be like, I want to contribute to this ticket. It's going to be like eating broccoli. I don't know. If you like broccoli, great, but
yeah.
There's also a lot of releases now that you can get involved in. We didn't have, right? 6.4, we're having this release for this inclusive release that we haven't had. We've had one before and we've only had these two. Like back in the day, we didn't have that. We had accidental representation. And I mean that with a beautifully open heart. If someone was included, it wasn't because we were trying to include. We were trying, but we weren't trying. And I think that there is a real want and desire to mentor and nurture and foster. And I know because I've spoken to other people who are older contributors who've been around who are willing to step back more and say, hey, these people should take more of the stage, should take more space. So I think there's definitely that if people want to come in, but just take it slow as well. You do not have to turn up and then be part of a release and then do everything all at once. It took me a very long time until I did releases, a very long time until I did anything to do with core. So just you have time. And I think sometimes people forget that they can contribute to a project for like a decade and they think they've got to do everything in the first 6 months of being involved in a project, and you really don't because you burn out. So
yeah, no, those are really good and helpful tips, Tammie, and I would definitely +1 to asking the question on why you want to contribute, because that everyone has different motivation and different ways to be inspired, but it's not one time, one day thing. That's what I believe. The contribution is kind of like a long-term journey. So you really need to find a way to
Relationship, right?
be
Like,
consistent.
you're meant to
Yeah.
be getting something from it. If you are just contributing and getting nothing from it, then why are you contributing?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. And I also, I think one thing that you also mentioned about it, that start small when you're starting, if you're contributing, starting your contribution journey now or very recently. So start small, and then you will be able to build your way up. Because I think one thing that you said, a lot of people come with this credential in their mind, like, hey, I have this 10 years of experience. I worked in this big agency, so I should be doing the big contribution. I was like, I don't think so that kind of works that way. It's basically like, you don't bring your credentials in the contribution, but what you bring is your creation, like, what you are good at creating and solving problem, and you kind of start from there.
And another thing is, think about your contribution as a kind of dial. I think of it a little bit like a kind of equalizer. You can come in, you can go away, you can come in, go away. And that's I thought I had to be all on at one point, because I was a full-time contributor, and I thought that. And then when I left that role, I thought I had to be all off. I thought it was like a switch. It's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a percentage, and being able to do that has been the most balance, and being able to find the appropriate. I sometimes don't find it. Some weeks I'm not finding it fully, but that being able to find that means I can find the right things to apply, where I apply my noise, or where I apply my voice. Let's not go with noise, because that sounds weird, but where I apply my attention, where I apply where I can be, and that means I can be more effective and more efficient. And I'm not going to, and if if I'm really having a month where there's so much going on at work because I'm just doing something amazing, I can dial back, right? Like I can, and that could be someone's experience. They can just be like, nope, I'm having an awesome time, I'm just going to dial back for this release. And there's releases, so you can be like, I'm going to skip out for a release, I'm going to go in for a release, I'm going to skip out. And that could be what happens to you. I live in the Northern Hemisphere. The winter is bleak, and sometimes you just want to wrap up in woolen jumpers and contribute in the winter.
Yeah. So, Tammie, what sort of positive impact or changes or opportunities you experienced in your life and career because of your contribution experience?
I've seen the world, to be quite blunt. I don't know whether I would have seen any of the people, the cultures. I hope I would have, but I don't think I would have. I would have needed probably to have gone on lots of holidays, amazing places to be able to see through WordCamps. I've got to see, to talk to people, to see experiences. Sometimes at WordCamps, you see conference centers rather than cities. But I've got to see places that I wouldn't have got to see if I hadn't been involved in the project. I've got to go to countries that I wouldn't have got to if I hadn't been involved in this project. I've got to hear voices. Yeah, that's been huge. It's definitely changed me. It's definitely changed my perspective. I truly believe that you are, like, as I said, you're some of the people that have got you to the contribution and some of all the experiences I've had. So yeah, that I don't know. My path has been very windy, and I think it's been able to be so diverse. I don't think I would have I think I would have had to choose a discipline more than I have. I've been very lucky and very kind of chosen in that way because of my contribution. It's given me the opportunities that I don't think I would have had before. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I do not doubt that because of my contribution journey that I've been given the opportunity to be able to go back to development that I've just had and all these kind of things. I'm also aware that I am the person that did those contributions, but I got help. People get help to do those contributions, and so yeah, it's given me opportunities to be involved in projects that I I couldn't have dreamed of being involved in, to work on things that I couldn't have dreamed of doing. Yeah. So all those things, I've got to see things that I don't think I would have got to see before, as someone who kind of, yeah. So everything, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, this is definitely, you know, not just the WordPress or open source contribution, but just in general, whenever we volunteer for any cause, you know, where it's not like, you know, you're involved, not, you know, from the perspective of that, you know, you are just going to, it's your job, but instead it's like something that you feel really passionate about and do it. So yeah, just good to hear how it has impacted.
And at one point, because it was full-time for me, it like the DNA of like what was kind of, it's so entwined. And I think and I have had some time away from the project, particularly the last year, and that got me gave me some space to really think about like what was my identity when it wasn't involved with WordPress. What was my identity outside of that project? And it made me reflect that I actually deeply value that part of my DNA, and that deeply respect and just hold it in such esteem and gratefulness. So I think that you have to be, just feel so gracious and thankful for it. The way that I'm trying to do that is by, okay, how can I support other businesses? How can I really get my skills up? How can I pass that on to other people? How can I give those opportunities? How can I also just keep going for myself and keep that fresh perspective? That's part of why I've kind of gone back to development, to get that fresh perspective for myself. But also, just how can I pass that on? I think is definitely a reflection. I think, you know, passing that gift of gratefulness on is really important. You can recognize you're grateful, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe pass it on as well. That would be good. Because other people that passed it on to me, they were passed it on. So, you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So there definitely a lot of takeaways from this, but the big one is what you will get out of the contribution experience is going to be very unique.
People get different things. So some people, again, you know, I've pretty much most people will get a part of their livelihood at some point. And I think that is part of it. Either you will get most of my jobs have been connected to it. Only my last job before this one wasn't connected to it, but even my job at Inpsyde, a portion of that is I'm doing contribution per hours. I'm incredibly lucky that I'm doing that again. I'm doing 10 hours a week. It's amazing and it's great. It's the right quota. I love that quota. And then I'm still doing some kind of work as well, which is great to balance it. But I think for everyone that contributes, at some point you're going to have the opportunity that it's going to give you a wider field of choice. Either it will be a opportunity to work with someone else that you meet in contribution, and it'd be like, hey, if I work with you, Mary, I can build this product because we've worked on this thing that we've really kind of noodled on together and it's kind of awesome. Or, hey, I've gone to this word camp because I was speaking at it, and then you know, all these opportunities open that maybe aren't open for you if you live in a small town or if you live in a village or whatever. So
yeah, great, awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Tammie. And I think the biggest takeaway is that what you will get out of the contribution experience will be very unique and special to you.
I think that's the thing. If you expect something to happen, it's like Santa. It's not going to happen.
And all the people that we meet, right? Like I have met so many amazing people. You know, just being a part of the WordPress community.
You have to be open to whatever's going to happen in your journey. And I think that's the thing, is sometimes in open source, you've just got to breathe, jump in with your feet and just go oof. And there's been a lot of times in my open source journey where I've just had to be, okay, jumping into it. Let's see what happens. And whenever I've done that with an open heart and let the community hold me, it's been amazing. So
and the great thing about the WordPress community is that if you try jumping into that, even your eyes closed or
Yeah, there's
handcuffed,
a lot of
you'll
people
still
catch.
people
Just
still
maybe
be
tell
there
them you're
to
going
help
to
you and
jump
support
first
you.
of all. Just prepare them you're going to jump. Just say, I'm going to jump.
Awesome, great, nice. So, Tammie, let's talk about. So we talked about the WordPress contribution, your experience, some of the tips that some of the newcomers can take, and some of the benefits and the positive impact in your life. Now, I also wanted to touch upon how do you balance,
Yeah.
your work and life, because that's the one part that, especially I experience. Like I'm
Yeah.
37 right now,
Yeah.
and like until 30. I had this, like, I was working 14, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
I was traveling everywhere, basically, like, had so much energy in me. And when I got 30, after that, I kind of like started to feel this need for rest, recharge, and all that. So, yeah, did you have any point in your life where you felt like, okay, now I need to slow down? And what was that process look like?
Yeah, so I'm 48 in a couple of weeks, and I definitely am fiercely defending my spare time. I think that's the best way I would put it. I have learned a slower pace of life, both through my body telling me or screaming at me. I think as you get older, your body is very unsubtle about it's the best way to describe it. But also, I think, I've been lucky to be involved in some pretty intense projects, and they've been amazing and great, but they take their time on you and your body. And particularly, I think the pandemic was a great time for a lot of people, where it forced them to be very stuck in one place. And it forced a lot of people to be like, oh, okay, my life, if I don't move around an awful lot. And it was the first time for me in a long time that I didn't travel. I kind
Does
of
traveling give you energy, or it drains your energy?
I used to think that traveling gave me energy until I stopped traveling. And then I realized that I had a whole life that I maybe wasn't living as much. And I think a lot of people live that. Your work life is one life, and then your non-work life is another life. And I quite like living my non-work life, turns out. And I've done an awful lot of pandemic hobbies. I did, like everybody, I did so many pandemic hobbies. I now have less, because I think, like everyone that had pandemic hobbies, we have like a box of hobby shame, I think, as you slowly but something for me over the years, I stopped making art. As more and more work and more travel happened, I stopped painting. And to me, that was a good indication of work was more important to me almost, and design was filling my brain. And something that has happened to me over this past year, particularly, I've started painting again. And that has been happened to me towards the end of the pandemic. I was lucky enough to have a sabbatical, and then that gave me some painting again. I was like, oh, I didn't realize then it was actually a little bit of an indicator of like, this is a balance thing, because you never do. And then this year I really noticed that, oh, okay, when I paint, that means my brain is in a good place. And that is an incredibly offline activity. Turns out you can't be online with I love digital art, but also there's something, a canvas. I sometimes use my phone to like draw a picture, but from it, but you cannot be connected. You can't be typing. When I create digital art, I can be typing. So yeah, it's definitely an indication for me. Same as plants was another thing. I never thought I'd be a plant person, but during the pandemic, I turned into like a plant person. Who knew? And turns out I actually can grow plants, but turns out I actually had to have some time with them, and things like that. Just having time at night where I don't do everything. I'm not until the small hours on computers. I'm not doing things until all those kind of things. So every minute doesn't have to be filled with something, that you can have silence, right? And I think that that's something that has taken me quite a while to realize. I probably this year it's starting to be a year where I've traveled the most since the pandemic, and I'm still not traveling much at all. But I'm doing it with moderation. And I think that I will always be very like, each trip and its worth. People are amazing. People are incredible. And I think I love every person that I get to interact with. But I also love not having to travel as well. So I think that's a big, and just that recharge. Because you need it. Your physical body eventually, like planes do take the toll on your body. And also for me, I had a lot of reflection over the pandemic. I live in the countryside, and that it has very much, and over the pandemic, I've lived further and further into the countryside. So really far. And it's made me really realize the impact that my travel was making. I don't think I ever realized it. I've always been like vegan, saying I was aware of everything, and I was still getting on a plane all the time and all these things, and all those kind of things that you don't necessarily it's not so great for you. So I think most people I know have found more of a balance. So.
No, I think that the balance is something that's much more needed, and especially when we talk about in fact, the title of this show, the reason I came to the peaceful growth, from the same realization that we all want to grow in our life. We want to financially grow, spiritually, or we want to grow and get better person in the relationship and family and friendship and all that. But sometimes we go too far, and also not like going too far, but I think it's just something that we don't know where to stop and how to stop. And most importantly, what to do during those stops. Because I had, that was first of the big challenge for me, that like as an entrepreneur, like I have much freedom and flexibility in my schedule and routine. So I was like, okay, I don't have a problem about like taking time off from the work. But then I think the biggest challenge for me was that I did not know what to do in that time off, and because the work has become so much part of my life, I did not know what to do when you don't work, right? So that was kind of like a very big struggle for me. And I started, I was like, okay, let me just start with reading books. So that was first thing I did. I was like, I can't just sit there and watch TV or just like sit there. Was like, my brain needs some stimulation. And I think starting with reading books helps me to enter into a different world where I'm still engaged. I'm still actually involved, because there is a whole different world when you start reading books or go into the books. But I think that's what I tell my team as well now, that like before you take time off, think about what you're going to do, plan it. Otherwise, you will struggle a lot.
I've often thought, I find it interesting when people say that reading books is a break for them, because I'm dyslexic. So reading a book is so not a break for me. I often equate reading a book like going to a gym. I feel like I have to read every day to just keep me going. But I do not. It's like taking medicine. I do not enjoy it. I do not find any pleasure in it.
You enjoy art, right? And painting. So I think that's the point. Like, we all need to figure it out.
My point is that by doing it more and more, I get better at it. With reading. It's that I have over time done it, but technology's helped me with things like that. And I think finding your hacks to relax. So one of the things that I've got is it's a Kindle Scribe. I love that because it hasn't got any other way of connecting online. So one of the things I am a nightmare with my very interesting brain, let's go with that, is if I'm using an iPad and I use the Kindle app, I am going to wander. I'm going to go into or I'm going to go into something and it's not going to be good. It's not going to stay in the book because I'm going to be bored. But if I have my Kindle Scribe, I'm going to stay in there and I'm going to be able to highlight words and I'm going to be able to keep my focus going because I've got a pencil and I can highlight things and I can keep my focus. And that's something that I've noticed over the years is that technology has, I've been able to choose technology that's really helped me. And particularly during the pandemic is I've really tried to get to know and create a space that has been, I think I was coping with the world. I think a lot of us were coping with the world. We were trying to navigate the world and tolerate it. But by being forced to stay wherever we were, we got to create a space that could work for us. And I've spoken to quite a few people who are like, for once, I got to create a space that fitted me. That was very much what my experience was. I got to create a space that fitted me. Now I never want to not have that. Now I'm like, okay, when I travel, I'm taking my little bubble with me because now I actually know how to function better. I know like how to regulate more than I could before. I now know when I don't need to talk, when I do need. So when I went to WordCamp Europe, I knew that I couldn't do a lot of social events because my brain just isn't ramped up to do that this year yet. Maybe next year, that's fine. But I know that like my brain isn't quite there yet and all these kind of things. And I picked the ones that I knew I could do. And it's about knowing yourself, but yourself changes. That's the big thing I can share with people is just try and get to know yourself every now and then. Because I definitely feel at like late 40s, a very more in myself, but a very different self to when I was late 30s, early 40s. I guess I'm more myself because I'm in, I don't know, that's a weird way to say it, more myself because I'm in myself. But I do think you start fitting yourself more because you're less trying to, you know, I always think of like your 20s, you're definitely like, you don't know yourself. You're trying to like be cool. And you're trying to like fit in, right? Like with your mates.
Yeah.
And then your 30s, you're just like, I don't fit in anywhere. Nobody, I don't know anything. Like, and I'm trying to sit down and I'm trying to like do everything and I'm trying to be an adult. And like the kids, you know, and the kids are stacked on top of each other in a trench coat and you're trying to function like an adult. That's what your 30s are like or something. And then your 40s and then late, I'm going to be 50 soon. And that definitely feels like it might be an adult. I'm not sure. But inside, I still feel like a 20-year-old sometimes, but I do feel more like a me 20-year-old, if that at all makes sense. And you start to really know yourself. And as a result of that, you start to know that, okay, maybe my brain functions this way, but that's okay. I now know how to accommodate and how to function in the world with my brain working that way. Or I now know that, no, I don't like that. And I know to say that I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because before you'd be like, I don't like that, but everybody else seems to like it. So I can't say that I don't like that because if I say I don't like that, that's not okay. Or if I say I like that, it's not okay to say I like that thing. And that's part of just like having that being your whole self. And you can only be happy, I truly think, if you admit who you are. Like you can change yourself to maybe not be bad. But you have to, like, as long as within your confines of legal and all those kind of things, like admitting who you are is really like, and how you need to function in the world. I think it's really, really important. And so many people got the space to do that. I know I did. I got the space to do that. You're probably going to get a lot of these conversations about people during the pandemic. You know, we got space to do that. We got space to, you know, get from weighted blankets through to, you know, the selling of weighted blankets through to hobby kits kind of went through the roof because people were just exploring. When you have that time with yourself, what does that mean? What is the space that you create for yourself?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a very beautiful message, Tammie. And I think my version of that is this, or based on what you shared, I wanted to share, put that in a different words, which is the way I see it. Like when you grow older, you don't need to like slow down in a way, like it's not something that where you feel like, oh, I'm going to do less. But I think the biggest actually realization for me, when I hit that moment where I was feeling exhausted, burned out, and I was like feeling tired and like not able to find the joy or excitement of doing things that I used to have fun earlier. One big thing was that, like, I think somebody said that, like, before your 40s, you say yes to everything, and after 40s, you say no to everything. So basically, the goal is that, like, pick few things. And I think it's not about slowing down; it's about focusing on one or two or three areas, and then focusing there and doing really well there. Because until your 40s, it's your experimentation phase. So you try different things, and then you decide, like, what are those things that actually gives me true joy,
meaningful.
Meaningful. Exactly.
You also see something I find curious, and I'm really, really curious whether this happens to me. When people retire, it's like they enter another curiosity stage. So a lot of people, when they retire, I have no idea when I'm going to retire or what is going to happen, but I am so excited if that happens. And you see, if we're lucky enough to retire, because that feels like a whole like luck thing, right? But you see almost at the other end, if you are with grace, if you get to have that health and you get to have that when someone has the time, if they have the capability, they then can have that curiosity again. So it's kind of interesting. It's like now I can be focused, and I'm kind of wondering if I'm going to start getting that kind of curiosity back. But now, it's definitely like I know where I want to put my energy. It's like I'm aware, like when you're younger, you're so naive. You think you have unlimited energy, and that's adorable and that's cute, but you don't.
Yeah.
I hate to be a bit of a old person there, but you don't. And as you get older, you really don't. I really like my sleep, and I like naps. Naps are great. They're the best thing in the world.
Tell me more about naps. Like,
naps
what is your nap time, total time, duration?
I'm not too good at napping in my weekdays. My weekdays I could keep going, but weekend naps, there's something amazing about a weekend nap. I tell you that, like 2-3 in the afternoon, if you can do it outside in like the warm sun, there's something about that, like shade.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned about the napping, because I had Pete from Leaky Paywall earlier as a guest, and him and we were talking about it. He's one of the biggest productivity and energy and health hack was napping. So he's like, I will take a nap every day, between 15 to 20 minutes nap every day, afternoon, and that will energize him. And will make him a little bit more energetic and productive.
So I don't do it at the moment in the afternoon, but I'm starting to feel that my body's like, you know what? After eating, napping would be good. So I'm starting to wonder whether like my lunch should involve that. But that's fine if that's part of it. I do kind of like kind of yin yoga. My yoga practice over the years has become more yin, less flow, and that's fine. If it just
actually I just finished my yoga and meditation teacher training program beginning of this year. So one thing I learned from that program was that yin yoga, or a very slow and long stretched relaxed yoga, that's actually really good form of yoga that everyone should practice.
Yes, and I'm kind of curious if I keep doing it, like yin, maybe a bit of hatha. If I keep doing that, like, can I keep going and moving as I get older? And there's bits that aren't so good, and that's fine because life. But it's like if I just have to do shavasana and then I just snore. Shavasana to snore mode, that's fine. It happens, that's fine. But honestly, like, I'm very lucky. I have a space. I actually do it in the studio here in my office. I have a space that I can do it. But
How often do you practice yoga, if you
I
don't
try
mind
and do something at least every day. But just because I kind of see it as my like brain download. It's just my brain needs a moment where I'm not focusing on everything. Otherwise, it would just.
Yeah.
But I'm also
it's help you with the health, but also I have noticed personally, I'm not sure about you, but like you will get so many creative and new ideas during that moment, right?
Yeah. So I'm asthmatic, so I actually believe that yoga has really helped me from an asthmatic perspective. It's something that's helped me with my asthma attacks. Yogic breathing is something that I've used time and time again during that. So it definitely has helped me with that. It's definitely one of the reasons that sometimes I can just move around in the morning. But there's over the years, I've not been able to be as fluid as I ever have been. I used to be able to do some stuff certainly can't do at the moment, and that's fine. But to me, it's just about turning up on the mat. And there's kind of that phrase of just turn up on the mat, and I kind of do believe that. I'm also lucky because I have a space at home that I can turn up on the mat, and I can look like a floundering caterpillar, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. I'm floundering in my own home, and it's totally fine. And I've got underfloor heating, so it can be super warm. But I also am I am 8+ hour sleeper. So I've always been someone that I like my sleep. I like my, So I've never been one of these. I'm really lucky that I don't have insomnia. I get it like once every 2 years and things like that. I'm annoying. So it's one of the things I don't.
Are you a night owl or early riser?
So I used to be super late at night and all those kind of things. And with age, I have got less like that. And also with roles, I think depending on like where you work and what you do. At the moment, I'm pretty much European time zone. But really, I guess my default is more by midnight asleep. That's kind of a healthy-ish pace for me now.
Tammie, thank you so much. You're so kind and generous today with your time and sharing all the tips. We are getting closer to the wrapping this up. I have one more question about that. Who should I interview next for the peaceful growth that comes to your mind? Maybe the person will be in WordPress community or out of WordPress community, but someone that you think.
I'd like you to interview Josepha.
Thanks, Tammie. Thanks so much again. And thanks for all your time and sharing your experience, your story, a lot of great learnings today. Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Peaceful Growth. Let me tell you, I'm an introvert. And also, English is not my first language. So you would understand how uncomfortable it would be for me to do a podcast like this. But we don't grow staying in our comfort zone. And that's what I'm doing here. And also encourage you to do things that challenges you and take you out of your comfort zone. I would also appreciate it if you shared this episode with others. It will help me on my mission to inspire 100 million people to build an extraordinary life. To learn more about how I balance my multi-million-dollar business and continue to learn and grow in other areas of life, check out my weekly newsletter, Learn Plus Grow, on anilg.substack.com. May the peace and growth be with you.